at our seminar of our Circular Business Academy program of the year 2021. This program is dedicated to circularity and understanding the understanding of risk in the context of circularity. My name is Giacomelli. I have a pleasure to guide you through today's program. We are pleased to welcoming so many registered participants today. Many of you circular expert practitioners. This is actually the seminar intended to this class of circular expert practitioners. It's the second one. The first time we met, it was a year ago, and unfortunately our situation due to the pandemic could not allow us to get together again in person. But this is the second one, and definitely not the last one this year, dedicated to professionals in their respective fields of expertise who are particularly motivated and engaged with questions related to circularity, and also to all of those who are getting there or who are not yet formally a part of our class, but are expert practitioners in their respective practices. So welcome all of you. We are glad to see some new friends, and we are glad to welcoming some of our regular participants. This seminar has received quite some turn up. We are awaiting over 30 people today, actually more than 60 registered participants for the two-day seminar are on our list. This event is going to be recorded, or it is already being recorded, so whoever will not be able to be a part of this round will be able to watch the video and join us in a week time for the second part of this program. Allow me to share the screen and introduce the topic of the day, which is dedicated to investing and financing circular innovation, the financing projects and companies engaged with circular transformations, and those who are seizing opportunities related to circularity, and who are at the same time contributing to a more circular and more sustainable economy overall. When we talk about financing, or more specifically to investing, we talk about assuming risk and managing risk. This is going to be the focal topic of these two sessions. Let me, before we begin, let me thank to the Public Scholarship Fund of the Republic of Slovenia, which has been supporting a good part of our this year's calendar. And thanks to that, this event is also co-financed by the sources supporting this type of activities in the shared program of the public fund. So we thank you very much. And this means that it is freely available, and so free of charge, and it is made possible to be and accessible to many participants who are interested in the topic. We are going to follow our program of the day, which will which will engage us in about a 2-hour time frame. We are going to talk about the assessment of circular and linear risks of a banking portfolio. Our speaker, Slaven Michkovic, who is the senior analyst at Novak KBM, will take this topic. Slaven is also a member of the CBA faculty. My colleague Jana Farrow will follow by introducing a selection of circular assessment tools, and Sebastian Žužek, also my colleague, will then proceed with the presentation of the Circularity Assessment Score, an assessment model developed by the Circular Business Academy, which was launched a year ago, and this time we can share with you our results and lessons learned in the testing year. We will also announce some progress, the most of it in the second part of the seminar. These are our speakers. Welcome. Welcome all, and I would also like to welcome two other speakers among us who are already present here. I see Christoph Püntmann, who will speak at in the second part of the seminar. There's also Katja Chleb, an experienced professional in leadership and HR development, who will also speak in the second part of the seminar. So let me just pinpoint three main ideas before we go deeper into the topic. This year is a year of hope, but it's also a year of in which we are entering a new stage when we talk about the circular transformations, and when we talk about the decoupling of human well-being from the use of planetary resources. So there are three groups of reasons, fundamental groups of reasons. One is that new technologies are maturing, technologies that can disrupt the old ones and help our economies move away from towards the decarbonization, the use of more sustainable resource use that can accelerate circularity and are based on renewable energies. This can be even a rather cynical statement, but it's definitely an optimistic one. Even if we didn't have problems like the climate crisis or the resource crisis, these technologies are now here. Many of them are here. They do have an effect on global financial markets, and would have disrupted anyhow the old technologies. I think this is a notion that we have to take into account. So the markets have been showing this through the last months, and consequently, companies who are bringing in new technologies have a tendency to be more successful, to be better investments. Secondly, the geopolitical situation has been changing. The lessons learned from this horrible pandemic are earned at a high price. Furthermore, not only Europe, also the US is moving towards, let's call it a Green Deal convergency, and this can contribute to some important milestones that are at sight through 2021 that include global governance convergence. We are awaiting some achievements at the COP26 summit in Glasgow in November. we are seeing further advancements in the regulatory framework development, particularly in the European Union. It's not just plastics, it's also other materials and uses, the extension of producer liability and other fields that are being tackled substantially. And all this, of course, opens new markets for circular front runners. And certainly the EU recovery plan, a generous financing instrument, is supportive to the EU Green Deal and is becoming a reality through this year. Finally, the EU taxonomy, a sustainable finance regulatory framework, is here. This will require some new way of looking at companies from the standpoint of banks or investors. And this will also require from these same players to look differently at banks and other financial intermediaries. These relationships will fundamentally change, and this time, financial intermediaries are a part of the solution to get out of the current crisis. They are also assuming a strategic role in the promotion of circular, or even in a broader sense, more sustainable investments. So public investment orientation will be needed to support this systemic change, and there's a challenge to support risk sharing of private investments and expansion of different types of financing instruments to be focused towards the emerging economic ecosystems. So there's enough on the plate that attracts our attention. So without any further ado, I would suggest that we move to the first presentation of the day. Hereby I'm inviting Slaven to take the floor. If you agree, so Slaven, please, the word is yours. I will stop sharing and you are free to go and to take command of the presentation, please.
Hello to everybody. Many thanks, Yuri, for enabling me to speak in front of such a wonderful and eminent audience. It's always a pleasure to share my experience with others who are trying to take this path towards more sustainable, more circular economy. For all others, as you know, probably, or maybe not, Yuri and I wrote an article last autumn. The article is about the possible change in methodology for bank capital requirements, namely when we introduce new risks like circular or linear risk, possible way to let's say, ease this transition is also to tackle the capital requirements. But first of all, do you see my presentation?
Slaven, we see your presentation, but yes, if you click to the presentation mode, it will be perfect. Great.
Is it better now?
It's wonderful.
Good. Just trying to remove this. Okay. Okay. So let me start first with taxonomy, as you mentioned it, Yuri, in your introduction. Namely, today it's not only about circular and linear. Today we are speaking about green and brown. We are speaking about sustainable and responsible investment and financing. So there are many new terms, and I believe also having in mind situation in my bank, it could be a little bit confusing. Now the banks are in front of introducing mostly the so-called climate risks. And we are speaking now about circular. So I would like first to emphasize that according to EU taxonomy, the transition to circular economy is one of the environmental objectives. So if somebody asks, where are we having in mind all these different categories, green, brown, sustainable, responsible, I would like to emphasize that circular economy and sustainable finances are two mutually enabling policies, like it is written in the name of the slide you are watching at. And even more, the EU taxonomy recognized the transition to circular economy as one of the 6 major goals. And just to remind you, the EU taxonomy is nothing more than classification system which enables categorization of economic activities sectors that play key role in ECG or climate change risks, I may say, in having in mind that transition to a circular economy is one objective. Also, the risks which can play a role in transition to more circular economy. So to be included in this EU proposed taxonomy, the economic activity must contribute substantially to one of these goals. And once more, one of these goals is definitely transition to circular economy. I think this is very important to emphasize. So this is it. This is about, let's say, connection and the role of EU taxonomy. Okay. I have problem, Yuri, to jump to the next slide. No, okay. It's okay, sorry. So, what is the major challenge for the banks? Well, you can imagine it's always about financing. So the major problem or challenge for the bank is the cost of financing of this transition to the circular economy. We believe, when I said we it's Yuri and me, because we wrote together this article. So we believe that we can classify all these reasons in 2 major categories. First of all the risks coming for, let's say, existing model. When I said existing, I mean linear industry. These risks are not identified in banks' ranking or classification system. So usually what banks do today is they look at your profit and loss statement, at your balance sheet, calculate financial indicators, and upon that indicators decide, let's say, what will be the interest rate of the possible loan and so on. So this is the, let's say, the financial statements are the only source of let's say, rating categorization of the clients of the bank. In addition to that, it's not only that these linear risks are forgotten or negligible in today's rating analysis, it's also that the specific profile of circular businesses is also not taken into account. So the possible benefits of possible circular projects are not taken into account when the banks analyzing the companies which are asking for the funds for the projects and so on. So these are two major, let's say, sources for the problem banks have with the transition to a circular economy. I may continue in that line. So it means that many companies are not rewarded for some positive impact on environment. This environment could be also the social one. So all these possible positive impacts are neglected. They are simply not taken into account. And not only that, also the negative externalities are not also taken into account. So you may conclude that currently, let's say, the banks simply do not care about positive on one side and negative on another side impacts the clients or future clients of the banks may have on environment. In addition to that, even how to say the most important requirement, regular requirement written in so-called Basel document, do not take into account transition to a circular economy. So this means that if we are following requirements provided by central banks and written in Basel documents, we simply do not take into account all the benefits, all the possible benefits given by transition to circular economy. And since the banks were and will remain the very important player in this transition, you may see in this slide that according to last year data, more than 70% of finance comes from the banks. So having that in mind, it's not necessary to emphasize how important banks are. So what we have to do is we simply have to recognize the beneficial nature of this transition to more circular economy. So how we can do that? First of all, I would like to remind you on the key tasks which are in front of the banks. You have listed several of them on this slide, but definitely the list is much more longer than you can see in this slide. So we can start, of course, with the definition of these risks, and we have to incorporate this risk in our risk inventory. Then we have to define the, let's say, KPIs. So the most important indicators which we will use to measure, let's say, quantitative, so the quantitative and qualitative indicators to assess the impact of these new risks to the financial stability of the bank. And of course, written in red, we have also to decide about the capital allocation toward this new risk. I deliberately write ECG because this is the broader concept which definitely contains also transition to circular economy, or if you want, which contains circular risks. And finally, I mean, having in mind the list in this slide, we have to determine the risk appetite. This is one of the key tasks in front of the banks. Our intention today is just to have a few more words about the capital allocation. You definitely know that beyond every loan or every investment, bank also charge some, there are some capital requirements. And having in mind today a methodology, we simply do not distinguish between, on one side, existing linear, let's say linear projects, and another side, the coming circular projects. So what we are trying in our article is to give a tool how to distinguish between two different, let's say, types of risk, between different two types of investment, how to, let's say, promote investment in circular business and discourage, on the other side, the investment using existing business model, so-called linear one. So this idea beyond capital requirements is linked to objectives. First of all, of course, we would like to incorporate circular risks in our assessment, and also to fill the gap. Simply, there is a huge gap today between, on one side, linear and another side, circular projects here. So we have also to take care that if we want to promote the circular business and in another way reduce the capital requirements, so this is the way we also have to mind, and this is written in red, that overall the capital requirements are enough high or big or appropriate to deal with the materialization of the risk coming from circular business. So how we can do that? Well, we simply look at the Green Deal of EU Green Deal and let's say use the very same idea. So we introduce two new factors. One is called circular supporting factor. The name itself tells what is it about. We are introducing an indicator which will, how to say, reduce the capital requirements for investments which are more circular than linear, and vice versa. We are introducing another one. We call this another one linear penalizing factor. So you can expect that this another one will penalize in a way that it will increase the capital requirements for existing business model, or if you want existing investments, which are more or less in line with the linear business model. So I will also explain why too. Why we didn't stop only with one, this circular supporting factor. Here I hope you don't mind that I how to say, sorry, introduce a formula. This is one of the two. I just want to give you a broad idea what is about. So what you have is here is how we calculate capital adequacy ratio. This is probably the most known ratio the banks are calculating when quantifying the capital requirements. And you can see here that in denominator, we introduce this circular supporting factor. So it definitely reduces the requirements, the capital requirements. And what you have here, the beta on the right-hand side of the equation are the, how to say, regulatory capital requirements. So in changing capital requirements, we always have to have in mind what regulator requires from us. We cannot go below that level. This is it, yeah. Let me spend a few words about this indicator. So once more, I hope the idea is clear. The capital or the capital adequacy ratio is simply we obtain that indicator when we divide bank's capital with risk-weight assets. And these risk-weight assets are decreased for, let's say, circular investments. Well, in a way, this is, how to say, acceptable idea, unless, let's say, like critics emphasize, unless there are, how to say, more these circular projects which just have a name, and in reality, these are not real circular projects, and too many. These projects can cause the so-called bubble called circular washing, yeah. Meaning that you know, you deliberately reduce your capital requirements, although you don't have a real circular projects. Well, you can always misuse some tools, and this is also the situation with this circular supporting factor. Yeah. So I may conclude that there is a fear that too much use of or too high circular supporting factor could, how to say, create financial instability of the bank or even of the banking system. Of this practice is used from another to one bank. So this is probably the main reason if we introduce also another one factor, this penalizing factor. But let me share also with you the possible impact of this capital supporting or circular supporting factor. In this graph, you see the line. So on the x-axis, you have a circular supporting factor in percentage points. So it starts with 1 and goes to 34. On y-axis, you have capital savings in billions. So it is proposed that this capital or circular supporting factor is in the range between 5 and 25 percentage points. So if this is the case, the possible savings in capital could range from approximately 2 to 11.5 billions of euros. This is approximation on EU banking system, and the data we used coming from ECB. You can see on the previous slide, you can see the table. So the numbers from this table are taken from a public source, public databases of ECB, and represent the EU banking system. So the assets of the EU banking system. Yeah. Okay. From the equation of this slide, you can see that the idea from penalizing factor is very, very similar to the one for supporting factor. but here we say increase the capital which is charged for, let's say, linear projects, linear investments. So if we increase, so if the, how to say, if we balanced the size of these two factors, we can maintain the capital, the required capital, on approximately the same level. So this means that we do not jeopardize the capital position of the banks, and this, in the same way, we clearly support investments to the investments, which means transition to circular economy, and penalize the one which stick to the, let's say, existing business model. We believe that the proper combination of the two could live also in the practice. What we did is just, it was just a stylized calculation. Unfortunately, we didn't try that lively on the banks. I think none of the banks in Slovenian banking system didn't jump to that. Not only to that, almost all the banks are at the very beginning of this very long path to, let's say, more sustainable and in such a way more circular economy. So this task in front of us, it has to be very well checked, analyzed before we put this into the practice, but we strongly believe that this is the right way to continue with them. You have also here on this graph the opposite situation. For how many billions will rise the capital charge if we introduce this linear penalizing factor? So you can see that it goes between let's say 16, 17 billions to 27, 28 billions of euros. Okay, this is it. Yeah, as I said, the proper combination of these two can really lead to, let's say, sustainable position of the banks. It will not be jeopardized, and another way, another side, it will promote path to more sustainable position. So, Yuri, this is more or less it for the new members or listeners. I saved this slide, which clearly distinguish between circular and linear risks. But since we showed it last time, I will not speak about now what are circular, what are the linear risks. So I think I'm almost spent the time given to me. Yeah. And if there are some questions, I will be more than happy if I know to answer.
Thank you. Thank you very much for diligently and accurately presenting this topic. You are all welcome to contribute to the debate that follows. Christoph has risen his hand. Please, Christoph, be the first to
yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for the very thorough presentation. And I think the point of adjusting the capital, the bank capital, in order to reflect whether a business is circular or linear is actually a very how to say, credible way of tackling these problems. I mean, like, as you said, it was like we shouldn't penalize circular businesses at the expense of keeping linear incumbents in place. So to what extent have these, I mean, number one, I mean, there's two questions that I have. Number one, which of the two is actually more beneficial? The one where you kind of like benefit the circular businesses, or the one that is penalizing the linear ones? So it's like, which one has been more acceptable? I mean, it's like, it's always difficult to deliver penalties to people because it kind of like feels that you're pushing businesses out of, or companies out of business. While it's always good to kind of like enhance the circular newcomers. So that's the one question. And the other question I have is, to what extent has this already been included in the discussions of the new Basel regime that is basically, I think, Basel IV? So number one, which one are people more in favor of? Is it like penalizing one group, or benefiting the other group? And the second question, to what extent has it already entered into the new rules?
Thank you very much, Christoph. Both questions are very difficult one, meaning that, there is no simple answer which can in one line answer to you. And clearly, let's say, if I stick to the first one, if I have to answer clearly which one is more beneficial, well, it's always conditional, you know. First of all, if I look at the bank itself, so from the viewpoint of the bank, it definitely, depends on the structure of the portfolio, you know, what kind of portfolio we have. You know that EU taxonomy categorized all the investment, all the assets, and there are one which are, more green, more sustainable, or let's say more circular. And there is another sectors which are not so. So from calculation point of view, it definitely depends. So what I want to say is how quickly one of these two will catch up and will reduce the capital if we speak about circular projects, or increase the capital if we are speaking about linear. Well, it clearly depends. What we did or what we intend to do with Yuri is also to use the tool which he already and his team developed. So this is CAS, Circular Assessment Score. Why I'm speaking this here? So you can imagine that picture is not black and white. You don't have projects which are clearly and 100% linear, and the projects which are on the other side 100% circular. Probably, as we used to say last year, there are many shades between these two poles. And our intention is to measure the level of circularity, and this level of circularity will calibrate actually, let's say, this beneficial factor, or maybe this one penalizing factor, or both of them. So to be more precise, we would like to really, connect the level of both these factors with the level of circularity, if you want. And then maybe we can be more precise when trying to answer to your question. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it also depends on the risk weights we already have, or which are already proposed by regulator. You know that when you look at your assets through the risk weights, there are, some intervals of these weights which are proposed to different types of assets. So this is additional reason why I mentioned that the structure of portfolio will also play a key role when we are speaking about how beneficial are one or another factor. So this is, you can see that my answer is not very precise in terms that I said this one is really the better. And there is also, I may say, and you touched that, there is also psychological side of this thing. Some people or some banks maybe like more supporting things when you support something, and they don't like penalizing the things. But I'm afraid that regardless to this distinction, we have to continue with both of these factors, since the financial stability is the clear goal we have to maintain, or criteria we have to maintain. I'm afraid that we cannot continue with just one, with just supporting or just penalizing, you know. So this is how I see the things. I think that in coming months, maybe years, the answer will be much more precise, and we can give you, how to say, more detailed analysis about introduction of these factors. Now about the Basel, well, I'm not sure that I'm in situation to clearly answer at which level the Basel introduced these two factors. Clearly, it introduced the path toward the circular economy, or more circular economy. I'm not sure now if they clearly introduce these two factors as Yuri and I introduced in our article. I believe that this will be the case, so I'm positive on this, because these two factors are clearly derived from the Green Deal. So if Basel, how say, take into account the Green Deal, which is also one of the, how to say, red lines of the new EU Commission, I believe also that it will be part of also of the Basel. So this is from my side. Okay.
No,
if I may add just a short comment on my side. You know, for me, right now it's very interesting to observe how the current practice will evolve. What we propose is firmly stands on the observation that actually, if we take into account the full context of circular, or even broader, a sustainable transition, a systemic development that is being put in place and is spanned by the full recognition of aspects of risk that so far have not been taken fully into account, then we should actually shift the perspective. In geometrical terms, we would kind of shift the coordinate system, right? Yeah. Furthermore, when we look at each individual company, both aspects, as Slaven has said, both aspects, the penalizing one and the rewarding one, should be taken into account. We also see other ways of tackling the same problem, like adding one more aspect to the current risk analysis. Like, you know, people say, okay, we have got market risk, we've got liquidity risk, I mean, this and that, and we haven't taken into account the climate risk, for instance. So let's see whether a company is exposed to the climate risk. And to our knowledge, this can be very partial, and actually it overlooks the fact that when we really want to comprehend the current situation, all aspects, all components of risk change. And that is the fallacy in which banks and other intermediaries sit. This is the fallacy that, you know, it not just has a negative consequence on imperfect allocation, or I mean suboptimal allocation of resources, of financing resources. It actually exposes the banks themselves towards risk of which they are actually not very well aware, and don't have a good ground to manage them. So to me, this aspect is particularly interesting, you know, and we are quite early in the development of the risk practice. And again, to me, and I'm not as opposed to Slaven in particular, or also you, Christoph, who are, you know, really experts with earned experience in the banking sector. I'm not a risk specialist, but coming from the outside, I see this as a very interesting topic that will decide how fast, and how efficiently the system, the banking system particularly, will adapt. But the banking system will actually lead the development of financing practice all across, because it is a systemic issue. It is certainly the market itself will do its job, but I think that we should not underestimate, not overestimate the market itself, and not underestimate the institutional aspects of and institutions such as banks and the system overall should not linger behind in this comprehensive multi-level systemic shift. Any other questions? Shall we move on? If you agree.
Thank you to everybody.
Thank you. Indeed, Slaven, this was very interesting, and I would like to now see into the next. I would like to move to the next speaker, Jana Feiroth, our program director, will introduce you to the circularity assessment tools. As you know, the Circular Business Academy has been practicing one such tool through the last year, and we will also share some experience with this respect. However, we would like to show you, I mean, how circularity can be traced. What this really means? What are the current approaches that several counterparts across Europe and across the globe have taken so far, and with what motivation? And then we will move on. Jana, please.
Thank you,
What
Yuri,
is yours, please?
Kind introduction. So I would also like to say, since you are all experts, please feel free to ask questions, but also to state opinions and give some feedback, because this is a project to improve and to go further and update our CAS. And we really value any inputs you might give us, and also concerning experience maybe on these other tools that I'm going to present now. So I would like to start, wait, does it work? Yeah. By stating what these tools are for. So when I had a look at different tools that are there now on the market and that you can freely access, I saw that most of these tools are actually targeted at companies that have just started some kind of circular transformation, or who are also interested in this topic. So this is very basic, these assessments, most of them. They're there to familiarize these companies with key elements of circularity and to analyze the status quo. They also present opportunities to them, because once you get familiar with this test and assessment and you look into what is analyzed, of course, you also get ideas of what's possible and where you can change. And then they can also be a basis for further targeted recommendations. So you could have more individual reports. And of course, one of the goals is also to align your company targets with higher goals, and then to use these tools regularly, so maybe annually, and see how you have improved. At this point, I would like to just mention the difference between assessing and measuring, because this is a question that's asked very often. So when we look at companies, we assess how well they're doing in circularity. We don't measure this because measuring is really based on quantitative data. And you can check or you can measure how well an economy is doing. But really, if we look at this for companies, we want to know what kind of capabilities they have to integrate into a circular economy, and also how well they are performing. Now I would like to go into the overview, and just so I already mentioned it, but this is a non-exhaustive list. So there are really a lot of tools out there, and we can't go through all of them. They all have different focus areas. Here are just some that are restricted to circularity, that are real circularity checks, and we will have a look at those. And then there are some further tools. You can see the first three are from a bank's perspective. So the tools that were on the last slide are for SMEs and for also bigger firms to assess their circularity themselves. And here we also see tools that banks use. I will also, of course, mention our own tool, the Circularity Assessment Score, briefly. And then there are also other tools that relate somehow to circularity, and that they cover different aspects that are important for circularity, but they're not circularity assessment tools as such. So we have resource efficiency, one tool I will also show you. We have life cycle assessments, sustainability assessments, environmental assessments, the ESG score that Slaven already mentioned. And there are also a range of specific tools that are, like, for instance, for the building industry or for specific sectors. If we start with the first one, this is an Interreg tool, the Green Cycle Questionnaire, and this is really an introductory tool. So this is for a company that doesn't really know a lot about the aspect of circularity. It's also for regions, and basically here circular front runners are identified, and you can get ideas from what's possible, what other firms in the industry are doing. And yeah, so this is basically an inspirational tool. And there's no score at the end, no graph as a result or anything. But you can share your practices, and you can share lessons learned and so on. So if we go to the first really, circularity assessing tool, this is the Circularity Check. And here you can already see that there are concrete measures. So you have a total score. It was, by the way, developed by Ecropreneur. And here they really want to assess different indicators and see how you perform. And there's a total score, and there are different indicators. And important to note here for this tool is that if you receive 0 on one of these indicators, you get a 0 overall score. So you have to show at least some kind of commitment in some area. And here you can see there's only 7 in recovery. So this firm, only got a score because they got at least some commitment here. And then they break it down into the different indicators. They break them down further so you can have some better analysis. And show nice graphs here to show your strengths and weaknesses. If we go to Circulytics, which is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's tool, we see that they have an overall score too. Their score is a letter from A to E, and it's based on assessing enablers and outcomes. So enablers, the inputs. So here you have like planning, people, skills, and operations, and so on. And then the outcomes that are the products and materials and services and so on. They also have strategy and planning and so on, these themes, and you can have a closer look at how you're doing in this. But basically this tool is addressed to larger companies, because this is an assessment that's very extensive, and especially larger companies also need to dedicate some resources to this questionnaire from different departments and so on, to really gather the data and have a good overall assessment. If we go on to the Circular Economy Toolkit, this is also a very intuitive tool. You see at the outcome, you see the opportunity and the feasibility, and you can quickly assess where you stand. And this takes into account all these aspects that you see on the left-hand side. And also there are some case studies and so on, some other informational material to support this tool. This is also focused very much on these opportunities in the product cycle. If we move on to the readiness assessment tool for the circular economy of Match, this is the Danish company. So they developed this tool where they assess the readiness along 8 key dimensions. What's good about this tool is that it really goes into detail about and is very individual on this assessment, but they have all these different dimensions, and they don't have an overall score or nothing really, no intuitively interpretable result for companies. So especially for newcomers, this may be rather hard to grasp. So the result is the readiness profile, and they do internal benchmarking and external benchmarking. So where their strengths lie and weaknesses, and also in relation to competitors. If we look at Circular IQ, another test that was powered, I mean, that's from the European Commission, but powered by KPMG and Circle Economy and MVO, Netherlands. We see that this is a very extensive report and very quantitative, actually. Here, you really need to know a lot about your operations, a lot of technical details in numbers. And what's good about this tool, I mean, it focuses on products exclusively, and it's very advanced in the way they handle the data. So their data reporting is very advanced, very technical tool. So this is for companies that know a little bit more about what they're doing and who are advanced in the circularity. And then, of course, our own tool that I will just quickly address because we will focus on it later. Sebastian will also say something about it, and Yuri, especially next time when we look into the new CAS. But here, I just want to briefly say this is our output. So this is the result that we give our customers. We give this metrics. And here, I think what's very nice is that it's very intuitive. You can see where you stand. You see if you're a circular front runner or not, and whether it's about commitment or business model potential, why you're maybe not in the circular front runners field. And as I said, now this focuses on the business model. So here is a difference between what we suggest and what other tools are that I just showed you, because a lot of these other tools focus on the product and what companies develop and the services. And here it's about the whole on a company level. So this CAS is also being used in the Interreg project Circular 4.0. So we have extensive exposure here and had a lot of testing also already, as Sebastian will then also show. Here's another tool that now was developed for Intesa San Paulo, so from a bank's perspective. And you can actually see that there are some similarities, which is also why we want our tool also to be applicable for banks to also assess companies. So there are some similarities here. If Yuri, if you would like to add some details on this tool, because you know this better than I do.
Well, thank you. It is definitely a strategic tool used by this banking group, one of the largest ones in Europe. It's not the only banking group that is quite advanced in the understanding of circularity at the level of their clients. Intesa uses this as one step in an overall engagement programs, you know, that they develop for the companies. ABN AMRO, ING, for example, two Dutch banks who exercise similar practices, to name also others. What I would like to stress is that this one and also some previous ones, you could see, you know, there and our cast, there are quite some similarities in all these cases. We are aiming at showing the circularity on two axes. One is rather about feasibility or potential, and the other one is about, you know, the actual level of commitment or the ability to fulfill or exploit this potential. So in many ways, these tools have a rather similar way at looking at circularity of firms. What also confirms what you have said at the beginning, Jana, that these are, no matter how, I mean, precise the scales can be, and they can be also, of course, numerical measurements. But anyhow, these are composite criteria, right? Both axes are normally composed of several criteria, and the way how they are construed necessarily involve some subjectivity, because they are based on a certain point of view, and certainly they want to demonstrate how a company contributes to the overall circular economy in which it operates. So that would be my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to show you one more tool that I promised you at the beginning that is not specifically a circularity assessment tool, which is the self-assessment tool by EREC, the European Resource Efficiency Knowledge Center. And here you can see an example of a tool that is really there for companies to assess how they're technically doing in their operation. So in the firm, here it's also a rather fun model, because you can click on these different items in the office, and then you can see how well you're doing in this, like in terms of food waste, cleaning agents, whatever. But this is a tool that you can use on the side, maybe because you can also return later. There's no need to complete this in one sitting, and it's a fun tool to see how you're doing in your daily operations. But it's not, strictly speaking, a circularity assessment tool in terms of the total, the output, either like the product or service of this company, or the business model per se. So I just want to show you here a table that I did of these different tools. But I will just go into a few things, because basically I presented the tools, and if you have questions later, we can go back, or you can also access the recording, of course, on our website and the presentation. So we said that Green Cycle is more like gives companies a first idea. There are no graphs, and it's very general, while the Circularity Check is a really extensive questionnaire, and there are a lot of there are 5 indicators. And you can also examine it more in detail, so this is more advanced. Circulytics, similarly to the previous tool, is also more advanced, a lot of detail, and more aimed at bigger companies, actually, for now. But they also have plans to do it to focus more on SMEs also in the future. The CE toolkit, that's really interesting for additional material also, and yeah, includes an introduction also and case studies. Match, that has the readiness profile, and you can see how well you're doing in comparison to your competitors or also in terms of your department. The circular IQ, the one that's really focused on the data analysis and very detailed programming. And the circularity assessment score, of course, our score that Sebastian will say some more things about now. And the one we just went through that's not strictly focused on circularity. So if we conclude, I would like to say that I found through this research that most assessments target SMEs. There are some exceptions, of course, and they target SMEs that have just begun with their circularity journey. So they try to keep it simple and intuitive. The focus of most of these assessments are products and services. And all of these questionnaires somehow struggle between the many complex questions to provide an in-depth report. And then on the other hand, to make it easily accessible for SMEs and understandable and also not to take too much time from companies, of course. We talked about the difference between measurement and assessments, which is really important in this regard. And lastly, I would like to mention that all of these tools need more submissions and more data to improve and increase their relevance so they can adapt to what companies need and to make it more intuitive and simpler. And we will see more about this now from Sebastian, who will talk about the statistics of CAS and our submissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jana. Thank you very much. Any questions at this point, please?
Yes, I've raised one question. So
there's a praise by Vasco. Thank you very much, Vasco. Appreciate it. Please, Christian.
Yeah, okay. Now the question is, now you've shown us, I think, 9 different systems or 8 different systems which have circular economy, and then this one special tool on the resources. But I mean, it's like if you go back to those which kind of like put a score to the different SMEs. Have you seen any SME that has basically been tested by the different systems and how the different systems score them? I mean, do they all rank in the very progressive circular economy companies, and another two maybe they're complete failures? Have you seen any analysis which compares them?
No, I haven't seen any of these.
Okay.
Like all of these presentations and so on of the tools, of course, they only present the front runners, and because this goes hand in hand. They promote the tool, they promote these partner companies, and so on. I couldn't find any really bad ratings or analysis of this, because also all of these tools are anonymous. So anything that's shared, if the company doesn't agree to present their score.
Okay, no, it would have been interesting, because at the end of the day, we're providing all these different systems, and we want to see how an actual particle in that system behaves in all these different magnetic fields, and then are they all deviated in the same way, or are the outcomes very different? Okay, that's
it's a very good question, Christian. So I may add to that. Just to confirm, first of all, that yes, there are not many examples shared openly about the overall result, the overall picture of how circular companies are around us by any of these measurements or assessments. Some, particularly those who are more complex, they are more kind of tools that help initiate one-on-one advisory cooperation. However, I can share that, for example, Intesa San Paolo said publicly that after the first year of the actual use of their circular economy standard, they went through less than 60 companies. So they started, with the thorough, but the one-on-one approach, and furthermore, our concept, the circularity assessment score, was first developed in a much more comprehensive way than it is now exposed publicly for the Slovenian Development Bank. And in the first year, this was 2018, the SID Banka actually analyzed slightly more than 100 clients, and they found that almost a quarter could be characterized as front runners. So they continue using it. There were several articles published on that, particularly in the banking magazine of the Slovenian Banking Association. So these are some of the clues that we have. Of course, these measurements are not directly comparable, as you could see, because the most of them are actually much more focused on products or services that the companies perform, and not so much on their business models or performance. So that's also something to distinguish. I would like to thank to Jana once more. There's another question. I see a hand raised by Bončina Jamšek. Please.
Yes,
Dana.
apologies. That was a mistake. It's not a question, but a very interesting presentation, I must say.
Okay.
But I would like to hear more first. So, apologies.
No problem, no problem. Thank you for your comment. But I've seen another one by Dexter Pajarillo. A question from your side, Dexter? Or maybe it was well, now Dexter can come back later. Let us see 1 year from the introduction of the circularity assessment in its quick version to the open public. We have raised quite some interesting results. So Sebastian Žužek, my colleague here with us, will go through the key lessons learned, and they will also somehow indicate where the concept may further evolve and integrate into the present needs of financial intermediaries and transformation managers. Sebastian, please.
Thank you, Yuri. Thank you, Yuri. Hello, everybody. I'll share my screen now. Please tell me if you can see it.
Yes, yes. Nice mountains.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, hello everybody again. My name is Sebastian, and I'll shortly walk you through our findings from the last year that we've been testing these tools of ours. As you might know, some of you probably even filled it out. The test focuses on evaluating 2 dimensions that are necessary for a successful circular transformation. On one hand, it evaluates the firm's circular business model potential, and it does that so through evaluating its value chain and how the value chain can achieve its full exploitable potential. And on the other hand, it focuses on a company's commitment to circular transformation. So, and this part is based on the managerial abilities and overall organizational practices that need to be implemented for the company to seize these business model potentials. So the final score of our test and the report that you will receive at the end is based on the score of these 2 variables. The test consists of 18 questions, the shorter version that I'm presenting, and the total and maximum score is 100. So if you would score 100, then you would probably have to start working on circular economy 5.0, right? So first of all, it's been 1 year since we started, and the number of units that the entries we got is 50. This is partly because we didn't want to, go full scale. Didn't let it go out of proportions. So we kept it in more of a private extent. But still, the survey participants came from all over, are international, all over Europe. And it is also important to know that most of these respondents were a person who is responsible for this field of work or this, this part of the company's business. So that means that the respondents had quite good understanding of the subject and the topic in question. The average score of our test is 45, with a median of 44.7. But I'll come back to these numbers later. First, let me walk you through some of the respondents' background information, so we will see who were the respondents. So there are mostly micro and small companies, from commercial services like consulting firms mostly, and also software services. But it is important to know that there were still also some banks contributing, and of course our goal would be that we would also maybe get more production companies that are maybe like interesting in this aspect of evolving their business model. So now let's get some insights on how advanced their circular activities are and what they focus on. So the reality right now, as you can see, is that a lot of them are still in the early stage of the process, with the most answer actually being that they do not engage in any activities, or that they just started investing in these activities. But on the other hand, we can see that there are still 4 companies, that's almost 10% of all the companies, that are predominantly based on circular investments and also have been in the past. So it's not just something they started now, but have been doing for quite some time. As you can see, the primary focus is, when tackling the circular opportunities, either creating a new product or service that is in a circular way, or that even the new existing product and services can have the potential to develop into these sorts of products, which is, I think, quite important, because for some of the companies it would be easier to start with something that they already have, because not everyone has the time and the budget to start investing in a completely new products and new inventions. So the last question that I wanted to highlight is the understanding of the primary drivers of those companies' circular transformation. And as we can see, we are already in a phase where everyone realizes that this is the next big thing, and it has to be done sooner or later. But there's, of course, a factor of technology disruption, and also regulatory reasons. So that means that public institutions are doing something right, that people are actually forced to maybe take a look around and do something because of it. Okay, so as I promised, we're returning to some more statistics. Here you can see the entries distribution graph. In total, we had 13 front runners. So these are the companies that had the best scores, or the score over 50, the total score over 50. But another really interesting thing here is the correlation. between the both variables. So between the commitment and between the business model potential. So before we even started with this test, we were quite, I mean, not worried, but we didn't know what to expect. We knew that the correlation should be somehow moderate and positive, of course, but will it be too high or maybe too low? Because if it would be too low, then it would not really make sense, because, you know, if you have the commitment, then of course your business model still has some tweaks to be done. You can improve it, transform it, and on the other hand, there might be a high commitment to it. But I mean, if the correlation would be too high, that would mean that everyone that would like to be circular could be, but that's not always the case, because some business models are harder to transform. So yeah, the correlation, as you can see, is 0.6, which is a moderate positive correlation, and it's something that I think we are really satisfied with. But of course, it's still a subject of research, and we will have to keep monitoring it. And of course, in order to get some more concrete results, we will have to have a bigger sample size as well. Okay, so in conclusion,
just to intercept you just quickly.
Yep.
If you go back to your previous slide,
sure,
on the correlation, first of all, 59% is you call it moderate. It's still significant, but if I look at the graph and I just simply plot a line through it, a regression line, and I see those points, how they say scattered around, you have two huge outliers.
Yeah.
So these two outliers are actually driving most of the correlation coefficient down. So you may actually want to check how solid these two results are, because if you can exclude them for whatever reason, this correlation should be rather 80%. But that's my point. Okay.
Yeah.
You could improve your results.
Yeah, thank you for this comment. Yeah. There is still like a lot of analysis to be done.
That's a good point, Christoph. Thank you. But you know, these results were hand checked, and I understand that they look statistically they look as outliers, but we actually excluded all those results from the database that looked like missing values, or that were not honest, right? So behind every door, there's a real respondent, a real company with a real situation. So they are outliers in a way that they also represent companies that are in this situation where they have a strong commitment, when they are well managed, let's say, and somehow committed, motivated, but their current business model does not allow for much more, or at least this was their self-assessment at the moment. So in order to increase their potential, they would need to do much more. So I would tend not to exclude them. That is my point.
Yeah. I'm not saying excluding. I mean,
yeah. But as for the rest, yes, and certainly it's something expected. I mean, it would be quite surprising if the correlation would be, you know, very, very low. It would be. I think the point is that there should be a level of optimal correlation with regard to data, and most probably when we get more data, we will be able to establish what this optimal level is, and so this remains a point of observation. But I would also like to draw your attention to another thing. Here you see the green area, the so-called unexplored territory. What kind of comforts me, because it shows that the responses were overall quite honest. I would be preoccupied if very many respondents, would assess themselves as already, winners of the circular transformation. But we could see that, yes, there are some of them who claim they are frontrunners, but not many have reached beyond the partial result of 40. Or actually, there are 2 companies on the 2 or 3 dots on the line, and 2 that are slightly above, and that is basically all. So I think this is actually quite realistic, I would comment. Here's a question from Bojana. Did you try to do CAS by different respondents from the same company? If yes, how did results differentiate? We did try this in a pre-testing phase, and there were no significant differences in that very cases, but that doesn't actually provide an answer to your question, Bojana. So this is still subject to exploration. I mean, this is all. There are many areas of potential, let's say, subjectivity, and I mean, being respondents, responsible persons, or not being more acquainted or less acquainted, outsiders, insiders. All these points of view, of course, we can assume they make a difference. At this level, we cannot say that we have sufficient data, that would tell what degree of subjectivity there might be in such circumstances.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's still a self-assessment, right? So yeah, we would really need, some more insights about the company. And
maybe you can go further to the conclusions, because there are some interesting points maybe to underline there as well.
So first of all, for now, the questionnaire, we got a positive feedback for it. It's clear, overall well understood. We are still working though on improving the texts of the questions as we go along. So we are in the process of adding some additional explanatory notes, so that even people that are not maybe so well informed about this topic or don't know about the vocabulary will be able to use the tool. We've also compared this result, like Yuri said before, with the seed bancas, and they use an extensive version of this tool, of course, but there are some correlations with it, so we were quite satisfied with that. We are also, of course, planning to do more testing and increase the sample size in the upcoming months, and we will also like all that are here to help us with that. And of course, we want to expand the questionnaire, and so we would improve the data processing and also the report at the end, by collecting more background information about the company. So this is actually the next stage that also Yuri will talk about. And we also plan on doing some industry comparisons that are relevant, maybe even inside the same company, like Bojana asked. So yeah, that would be the main focus right now. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything to add, Yuri?
Very well. I mean, I would prefer to giving words to our attendants. Are there any questions, please? Any other observations?
I think when this tool is really finalized, like when it's really completed, I think it would be interesting to compare this tool with some other tool and compare results. If there's any other tools that does similar assessment.
Absolutely. Hello, Vesna. Are you in Japan?
Yes.
Okay, you're still there. Glad to having you at this late hour, I believe. Yes, we would like to, because such comparisons would help us improve and help us also get to some answers. Because, for example, we are questioning ourselves: is it good enough that each factors assessed are equally pondered? You know, we cannot really tell at this level. We try not to mess too much with you know, we try to exclude subjectivity to the maximum extent, but only such comparisons would give us further reassurance. So so we have been observing this, and unfortunately, those who I believe have got the best data have internalized these systems, and particularly banks. Some of those I have mentioned before, they use this internally, and they clearly cannot share much, also due to the banking secrecy, and that is a significant limitation. However, we are now entering, as you see from these conclusions, we have received, after a year, we have received some assurance, because first of all, there were no complaints about the understanding of the questionnaire, and the most of those who initiated the questionnaire have also completed the questionnaire. So this means that it's quite well understood. It's not too difficult. Certainly, the comparison that we can have with SID Banka is also quite reassuring, as Sebastian already said. Now we are working on improving the report. The report can be improved in two ways. One is that we can introduce, now that we are coming into the area of large numbers, we can introduce some useful comparisons. And we will also add some questions that will help make such comparisons, like, for example, at the industry level. Eventually, it could be also at the country level or economy level. That could bring some more insights to the respondents. We are also going to improve the feedback by adding one more step, and that is simply to make an interview before, you know, for those who will be willing to participate, to get a better insight into the business model they are pursuing, and some of the practices, and that could further improve the individual feedback, I mean, at the level of individual respondents, of course. So these are some of the directions, and basically we see, given the diversity of uses that are emerging, we would like to adapt feedback to three types of uses. One, most general one, is of course to transformation managers who are managing transformations at their respective companies. Within this, there is the second level. You know, the transformation doesn't happen in a short period of time. These transformations are very long term. So they, in a more complex organizations, they happen over you know, a number of breakthrough projects. And so the second layer is how to adapt this tool to measure a contribution of one project in the focus. Because the way how companies often change is that they set a program, or composed of one or more transformative projects that are significant also for the rest of the organization. So the contribution of breakthrough activities or breakthrough projects. And the third level, of course, was addressed at the beginning by Slaven, how to make this assessment, I mean, enhance it, and how to make it as compatible as possible for financial intermediaries, so that they would actually be able to rely upon the score and perhaps some additional feedback, and so that the circularity assessment could be used in the interaction between intermediaries and their clients. So these are the three main directions of further development. We will be able to present some of that in the next, in the second part of the seminar, and also through the year we will certainly keep you updated with that. And are there any other questions? Jana? Okay, Jana says thank you to Alba. Very well. I would like to thank to Sebastian for his presentation. Any further comment from your side, Sebastian? If you agree, I would proceed to our actually to the rest of our program for the day. Could you see my screen? I don't think so.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Right now, I hope it works. So as you could see, we are approaching the end of the program of the day. Let me thank to Slaven, Jana, and Sebastian for their contributions. What will follow? The next time we will discuss in more detail the enhancements of CAS. And for this, we need some of your help, as you could see. I would kindly ask you to do this short homework. The first thing to do is please test the CAS 2.0. You will be involved as privileged participants in the pre-testing phase. So you will be able to fill in the questionnaire. You will get by email, you'll get a link. And then you will be able to access and fill this in. And so perhaps, I mean, they'll definitely help you go into the details after having had your hands-on experience. Then, of course, please propose and if possible, introduce at 3 firms or more that we should approach and ask to fill in the CAS 2.0. You can do this simply by replying to the email you will receive. So you can do this anytime next week by the next Thursday. We will see each other next Thursday, 18th of February at 3 p.m. Central European Time. We would also like to involve those who would like to become circular expert practitioners to apply for that. This means that you sign solemnly the declaration here presented. You will receive all these slides. So if you would like to cooperate with the Circular Business Academy in the future and be privileged invitees to the seminar stream and to others, you are most welcome to doing so. And we will accept this indication. And of course, by declaring your willingness, we will bear this in mind and continue engaging you all into our activities, which are dedicated particularly to this class of circular expert practitioners. Everyone will receive the certificate of attendance. Everyone who will attend this seminar in both sessions, in the first and the second part. We understand that some people who were registered today actually wrote us that they would not be able to make it. We will ask them to look at the question, to watch the video, and this and the homework will be one of the will be the conditions together with the attendance in the second half to also to join in and to be able to receive the certificate of attendance. So I would like to thank once more to the Public Fund of the Republic of Slovenia for scholarship and HR development for supporting this activity. Are there any further questions, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, please? I see that we are slightly over time, so I know that a good seminar is a good one only if it ends on time. I apologize for that. I hope you enjoyed the time we spent together. The next time we will be together with Katja Hleb, who will speak of leadership challenges related to the transformation of financial intermediaries on one hand and companies on the other hand, with regard to this newly developed relationship between them. And there will be Christoph Bündmann, who has got extensive experience from the banking world and is the founder of Highbrook Advisory, and will try to analyze, what are the critical points in which banks will be changing in their contents and in their structure to match this new role, a very important business and societal role that they have been undertaking, thanks to the taxonomy and the broader context that is coming in. So I thank you all, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon, to seeing you in a week time, Thursday, 18th February at 3 p.m. Have a good evening and bye.